Hey, as everybody starts to roll in here this morning, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day, your Wednesday, this beautiful day in Wisconsin, to join us for our bi-weekly podcast. We got a great show put together. We're really excited to get through a few different things. But before that, we want to begin this in gratitude as we normally would. So my gratitude is super easy this morning. I am any minute, any hour, any day now, about to become an uncle. So my brother and his wife are going to be welcoming a baby girl into the world. Michelle, my sister-in-law, she is past her due date at this point, and my family is incredibly nosy, and we are checking their location just about constantly. So, of course, not during the workday. I did see Peter jump on this, so no, I am not looking at my phone for that. Anyways, Zach, what's your gratitude for today?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Always a lot to be grateful for. Grateful for an amazing few days of great weather that we feel like we've been waiting all of May for. But just in general, just extremely grateful for the opportunity for the Italy trip my wife and I made and for celebrating our wedding. And it just really for perspective of seeing a new culture and history and new food. But really, the main gratitude that comes from it is just the amazing people that we have in our life that were able to be there and to celebrate with us. So I'm grateful for the Italy extravaganza 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Hey, I've said it once and a million times over. I was grateful to be there. Ben, how about you?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm grateful for, as some you may know, that I coach high school baseball. And I'm just really grateful for the kids. We have some really wonderful kids this year who really have bought into caring more about each other than themselves. And that was kind of our season theme. And so I'm just really grateful for those kids and all their hard work that they've put in this year.
Excellent, excellent. Michael, your hair looks great today. What are you grateful for?
Thank you, Mike. Keeping it very simple today. I'm grateful for our armed forces, warmer weather, and for friendship.
Excellent, excellent. And last but not least, Julie.
Yes, thanks, Mike. I am also grateful for the nice weather we're having. The farmers markets are open, so gathering vegetables and getting the garden going. So it's a great time of year for me. I just enjoy the gardening and getting out there in the nice weather. So thank you.
Absolutely. Farmers markets really are wonderful, and West Bend has one of the best ones. So,
For sure.
highly recommend if you're in that area, go check that out. But, anyways, to get into the content that we got put together for today, so extremely excited to get into a few different things. We're about a month away from the end of the second quarter, which means it's a great time to kind of do some of our mid-year check-ins just to see how we're doing financially, thinking about the plan itself. And then, of course, it's great to reflect a little bit on the markets. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the markets, where we've come year to date. We're going to talk about some of the financial planning aspects, some of the tax planning we should be looking into to prepare ourselves for the next of the year. Ben's going to talk a little bit about withdrawal rates, double checking, making sure that you're in a good place from where that's all coming from. Michael's going to add a little bit of color when it comes to some of the planning pieces. And then at the very end of this, it's appropriate that I will be an uncle soon. I want to bring up some 529 planning ideas. We are very close to 529 day, May 29th, if you will. So, anyway, Zach, why don't you kick us off with a little bit of market updates and whatever else you have?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. As normal, just roll through where market indices are year to date and kind of just to show also how good the month of April and how good the month of May was as well. So the Dow Jones up about 5% on the year, which is an 8% increase since April 1st. The S&P 500 is up almost 10% year to date and 13% increase since April 1st. The NASDAQ is up almost 15% on the year and a 21% increase since April 1st. So, as a reminder, the NASDAQ is about 50% weighted towards technology. So, it's really been the excitement around artificial intelligence, the build out of data centers, and technology has had a really good run over the last month and a half. The Russell 2000, which tracks those smaller size companies, up about 18% on the year and about a 17% increase since April 1st. International up about 7.5% on the year and an 8% increase since April 1st. And emerging markets up 22.5% on the year and a 22% increase since April 1st. So just an extremely good reminder of why it's so important to stay diversified. Where if you just looked at things over the last 6, 7 years and going back to 2019, you probably would have rotated out of emerging markets because it would have been annoying to watch it just be 1%, 2%, maybe even down when other indices were up. And then all of a sudden over the last 12 months, that's when you want to own it. And it happens like that consistently over time, and why it's a timeless piece of ours to just own the different asset classes. And as we are at all-time highs, once again, it seems like we've had this conversation almost every webinar over the last 3 years. But just a reminder not to really peg that top dollar amount. It's just our temporary value that our portfolio is worth, and it could be less in the short term. It could be more, but just don't peg that top dollar amount. We just always want our plan to drive that. That if our plan is in good order, temporarily value is here, that we're not taking those withdrawal rates that Ben will talk about at the top balance. We're really looking off of what does it look like if we had a 10, 15, 20% correction. So just beware of kind of pegging that top balance so that everything from there doesn't feel like a loss, that we have a long 10, 15, 20, 30-year journey ahead of us with this. And one thing that we've just had through conversations and also listening to other advisors, we've kind of noticed that individuals' risk tolerance for risk is increasing, that when you watch markets continue to go up like they have at a pretty significant amount over the last 3 years, that there's more conversations of, oh, we should get into this individual company, or fear of missing out on even a bigger return. Just be aware of that. We always want our plan to drive those decisions. We don't necessarily want current markets to drive those decisions. And if any of you are on this webinar that are thinking about retiring, because our balances are more than likely at the top that they've ever been, if we're planning for retirement, we want to plan off of a number that's 20% less. And if we can make retirement work off of that number, then we're extremely confident with it. We don't want to look at a 3 or 4% withdrawal off the highest number, because in a very short amount of time, as you've seen being an investor for a long term, could be a significantly lower number, and we don't want to plan off of the highest number. So with that, Mike, I'll pass it back to you. Go through some mid-year planning check-ins.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Zach, and thank you for sharing that. And in the spirit of 529 Day, one of the things that I always want to remind individuals when we talk about risk tolerance, it's not just based upon the perception of what's happened recently. We always look at this as being something based upon time horizon, and then, of course, the understanding of how the market moves up and down. And that's something that we continuously coach upon. It's something that we always have conversations about to make sure that we understand that our risk tolerance doesn't interrupt our goals long term, and of course short term if we're getting a little bit too aggressive. So another thing with the markets, what we've got going on year to date, lots of volatility, of course, as there always has been, especially the last few years. In the first few months of the year, we've had some sort of, and this year not quite, but a correction. This year we were down about 9% at one point in the S&P 500. Our strategies were able to sustain a little higher return than that, just based upon our exposure to things like emerging markets, global investments, and a little bit of gold underneath the surface of the portfolios itself. So just the way that we look at everything continues to create a balance, and we're not just over allocated to one specific asset class. Looking forward, there's some really significant events that could be happening within the market. The first one that I want to touch upon, and as significant as we want to talk about, it's more of like a change of sentiment. That's the Federal Reserve and interest rates. Inflation is proving to be sticky, and it seems to be on the rise, just given costs of energy, things like that going on in the world. So what is the Federal Reserve going to do is a very big question. Well, the anticipation coming into the year was that there's going to actually be multiple rate cuts this year. Everybody was looking for the opportunity to maybe refinance something a little bit lower, whatever that may look like. But in fact, what we've noticed is inflation has just continued to be not at all-time highs by any stretch, right? But it's there. And so the Federal Reserve has reacted by not doing anything. And it is now anticipated by the overall market that that will be continued to be the case unless something changes. We know something will. Obviously, something did in the last 5 months since the beginning of the year. So we'll continue to monitor that. But in fact, now there's actually an expectation that it's about even as far as could there be a hike in 2027 in comparison to cuts. So something we want to just understand that inflation and the Federal Reserve and interest rates have kind of normalized right now. So that's what we'll continue to plan with. The other big event, some of you may have heard of it. It's been in the news quite a bit recently, especially with all eyes turned to the TV with the Artemis mission going around the moon, space in general. SpaceX is expected to IPO, and that's going to be one of the largest, or the largest actually, IPO at all time. I think they're getting about a $1.7 trillion valuation. it's something that we're watching, and we trust our managers in the funds that we recommend to make some of these decisions within the core to see if it makes sense. But we're going to continue to be on top of these things, and we just want to bring that to you, that we know that that's out there. Not that we recommend to buy it itself. It's not a recommend to go out and find that SpaceX IPO and participate. In fact, it's probably going to be extremely volatile, like most IPOs are coming out the gate. Sometimes it's nice to watch that level out. If you have questions about it, let us know. But these are things that we're thinking about, something that's in the headlines that's being talked about quite a bit. So space in general, it's kind of an exciting frontier, if you will. Anyways, let's get back to the planning. I really want to bring Mr. Birschbach in. So, Michael, what do you got for us today?
Thank you, Mike. I just want to talk over a few planning items this morning. Really, financial confidence comes from being intentional and prepared. We're here to help give you that confidence. We're not trying to predict where the markets are necessarily going to go next. But just a few items for today. Really want to start with spending and saving. It's a core piece of planning, as simple as it may sound. As Mike had mentioned, the cost of most things has increased. And question for you on the call today is, have you still been able to save? If you feel like you're spending a lot and it's maybe you have a high spending rate and it's within your control, maybe try to be intentional with your savings. So as you get paid or as you're receiving income, earmark 10 or 20% of that amount and move that over to another savings account. Try to live off of that lesser amount and just adjust your lifestyle. It's a very simple way to be intentional. Another piece that comes along with that saving would, of course, be the emergency fund. I know we've talked about this numerous times, probably sound like a broken record at this point, but having 3 to 6 months of expenses in savings is extremely important. It's a great backstop for any surprises financially life can throw at us, and it's going to give you a really good sense of security having that. Now, last piece for today I want to touch on is life events that probably deserve a little bit of attention. As we come to the mid-year, there could be a handful of things happening in your life or with your family. So a few examples of that would be, are you planning to retire in the next few years? Maybe practice your retirement budget now. If you're planning on needing $5,000 a month as an example, try to live off that amount. Can you live on what you're anticipating needing? It's going to be a great gauge as far as how prepared you are for retirement, and as we put that financial plan together for you, it's going to give you a good amount of confidence entering retirement, knowing that what your actual expenses are. Another example of this is if you have aging parents or if you are currently aging, it may be time to think a little bit more seriously about yourself or your loved ones and prepare for a different living situation before your hand is forced and you need to make a decision. We do an event on this the last couple of years and plan on doing that going forward. It's called Where Will I Live? Just giving you guys a lot of resources to talk to or think about as far as forming some decisions around this next phase of life. But ultimately, there's a lot of topics surrounding financial planning that we can cover. It can be really overwhelming to try to do all of this at a mid-year check-in or even over the course of 1 year. If you make consistent steps in the right direction, it's going to put you on that path to success. So please reach out to us, talk to us about what's most important to you. It's why we're here. We're here to help. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Michael. That was a very, very appropriate segue for when I'm about to bring Ben in. I won't leave any more out to it. Ben, talk a little bit about withdrawal rates and some of the income coming from the strategies themselves.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. Michael set me up perfectly because we talked about spending and now how do you spend and how do you get it? It's your withdrawal rate for when you're retired. So maybe it's a great year to kind of check in and double check this spending and this budget. So we like to say is if your plan called for $80,000 of spending this year, are you on track for 80 right now? Or are you actually more closer to 95,000? This is really a great time to double check, hey, are we increasing our spending because as Mike said, there's a lot of increased spending. It's inflation is sticky. Or is it, hey, we've just let our lifestyle kind of creep up a little bit more than we were anticipating? We don't need to be perfect, but we're definitely trying to catch this drifting early in the plan. Because without this, if we do sustain over that 4%, we start to get the 5, 6, 7% range, we run the risk of your money running out. And that is something we don't want to do. That's why we try to plan ahead. We plan for this. We expect this. It's also really, really easy to increase the spending when markets are all crushing it and things are going really, really well. It's easy to get complacent versus staying disciplined, sticking to your plan. And what does the plan say? It's much harder to decrease your lifestyle than it is to increase your lifestyle. So we really want to make sure we stick to that 4% or 3% on the conservative side to make sure we are prepared for no matter what the markets bring, whether it be a 20% correction, which is necessary and will happen, whether it be today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, we're not sure. But this rate ensures that we can be prepared. Also beware of those out there in the world who start to say, we can bump it up to 5 or 6%. That's okay. Well, maybe the last 5 years, because the last 5 or so years have been some of the best market returns of all time. What if we have years like the 2000s where it was basically flat? That's what we want to prepare for and make sure we are set up for the plan for you to make sure you live the lifestyle you want to live. All right, back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Ben. And what he's really referring to, and what we got to remind ourselves of, is that we're talking about the entire portfolio when we look at these sort of distribution rates, and especially when we're funding our retirement. Something that is unique, bringing back up 529 plans in this entire conversation. Guess what the withdrawal rate of a 529 plan is when you approach college? Well, it's just about, well, the goal would be 25% per year, right? So that you pay for college completely over the course of 4 years if someone is to graduate over that time frame. Anyways, it's very, very high, and that's by design. And sometimes there's other accounts that we have set aside that are for a certain purpose at some point in our lives. And what is incredibly helpful for us, and we will always ask the question, what are the short-term expenses? And when you're approaching mid-year, especially at a time when we're looking at markets being just about or at all-time highs after the close yesterday, it's a great time to take a look and think, wait a minute, my child goes to school in 2 years, and I have this 529 plan turned up to be as aggressive as we could because that was our risk tolerance. Now, should we set aside that first semester because we have the opportunity to take advantage of something that we know exists, and that's markets that are at a great high. We've gotten some great appreciation in some of these strategies. Should we be setting that aside? Same with those other accounts that are out there that we're thinking of potentially making a big ticket purchase. First, let's have a conversation about it, make sure it fits within the overall plan as far and strategy as far as withdrawal rate's concerned. But do we need to set some cash aside for those short-term purposes? So just something to be very cognizant of. It's a great time when we talk about approaching mid-year to be able to think about some of this planning. It's also right now very situational because of where markets have traded and the growth that we've been able to achieve over time. Zach, what other kind of planning things should folks be thinking about right now?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think I could go on all day with all the ones that we look at behind the scenes here, but just a few others that were just top of mind after Michael and Ben went through, and yourself is just taking a look at how our income is looking based off of our projections to start the year and where we're at now. That if we're working, did we have any unexpected bonuses? Do we have restricted stock units that maybe were vesting this year that we didn't really plan for, or maybe did plan for, but maybe the stock appreciated to an amount that was much higher than we thought it would be at the start of the year? If we're already in retirement and taking withdrawals from retirement account, how are those withdrawals looking? Did we have something unexpected like a vehicle purchase or an unexpected travel expense that came out of an IRA that will increase our income overall? How does that impact with Social Security? All of those different items, and just taking a look at those projections, a perfect time to do that. So there's opportunity to adjust or to pair that with some other planning throughout the rest of the year. And also heading into mid-year here is just taking a look at our tax planning with that if we're over 65 with the super senior deduction that went into effect last year, it might be difficult to itemize, but taking a look at that with the state and local tax used to be capped at 10,000, now it can be upwards of 40, depending on your income. If it was a larger charitable giving year, as an example, maybe you actually might be able to itemize this year. So taking a look at that with your accountant or with us as ourselves. And when it comes to capital gains, there might not be a lot of things for tax loss harvesting to offset gains this year, just with the growth over the last 3 years, but could be an opportunity for some gain harvesting, that if something has appreciated in a non-retirement account, may be able to trim off of it depending on the rest of our income where it's actually tax-free to take out of it if it's a long-term capital gain. So those are things that warrant further review and are specific to your own scenario, but just important to look at. And then always that we talk about one of the best planning tools in our planning toolbox, if you will, is those Roth conversions and taking a look at that and how that pairs with the standard deduction or itemizing this year, or if we're planning on doing the Roth conversion and we actually have more income than we thought we did through withdrawals or something unexpected, maybe it's something that's pushed to 2027, but just taking a look at that. And one thing that's just top of mind, unfortunately, we've said goodbye to some amazing long-term client of ours recently, and just taking a look at the estate planning portion. It's always a good reminder to just take a look at that, make sure everything is aligned with your wishes, and taking a look to see if maybe there was a new marriage in your family from a son or daughter, and maybe taking a look at that, or a new grandchild or something like that. So just going through the estate planning portion is always very important. And then just looking at our charitable giving plan for the rest of the year, that if we've given in cash throughout the year, maybe it's time to look at appreciated securities, or if we haven't taken our required distribution yet and don't need the full amount, maybe looking at a QCD, qualified charitable distribution. So there's so many amazing things. This is what we're constantly working on behind the scenes for you to identify these and take a look at these further. But if one of these struck a chord and is something that you want to review further with us, that's why we're here for you. So with that, Mike, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Zach. Yeah, estate planning is really something we should be asking ourselves at all times, especially when life events occur, when things happen, maybe the birth of a grandchild, a birth of a child. That's one of these things that we want to make sure beneficiaries are updated properly. And on top of that, with 529 plans, we want to make sure that maybe we have a successor listed for the 529. For a very long time, you could basically only open up 529s in one person's name. It is not an automatic transfer to the remaining spouse if something were to happen to the owner of the 529 for that person to take it over. Will that likely be how it lands? Depends on the probate process, how that actually happens. But it's important to review some of those things, not just beneficiaries, but successors of things like 529 plans. And coming back into the entire conversation, because I do want to continue to celebrate the idea that 529 Day is coming, I just want to share a little bit more about it, because 529s aren't just for college anymore. It is something that is primarily the best savings tool available for college in general. Not only are you getting tax-free growth of an asset that you are setting aside for future education expenses, it comes out tax-free when spent on education, and you get a small state tax deduction along the way with a qualified 529 plan in your specific state. It's not every state that has tax deductions. In fact, California doesn't have one that I just know of because of clients there. It's good to review the rules because they're all a little bit different. In the state of Wisconsin, however, you get a $5,280 state tax deduction per beneficiary. That just equates to a few $100s, but it is something. So something to be cognizant of when starting one of these plans. Now, coming back to the idea of 529 plans not being just for college, and one of the conversation pieces that we end up having very often with clients is, I have no idea if this baby is going to go to college someday. I have no idea if college is even going to exist in the current capacity. There's a lot of speculation that artificial intelligence could provide the outlook or outlet for education, or in fact, replace some of those jobs that somebody used to have to go to college for. So if they go into a trade, then what? Well, in effect, trade school can be paid for from a 529 plan. Associate's degrees to somewhere like a tech college can be paid for from a 529 plan. And yes, if we accumulate enough assets that we were anticipating a 4-year school, there may be some left over if they do go one of these routes. Well, in fact, and one of these things that we have to learn a little bit more about is that 529 plan assets can now apparently be used for starting businesses, making some of those decisions that for yourself financially, you can actually use those for that. That comes directly from a representative from the Wisconsin Tomorrow Scholar 529 plan. So there's a lot of things. And I just want to share that because this is ever evolving. And so the landscape continues to change. The last thing that we've talked about quite a bit with 529 plans and the opportunity that we have for them is to start funding a Roth IRA for somebody who doesn't need that asset for college themselves or for any education or for starting that business, if that is indeed an opportunity as we continue to get more clarity upon it. The idea is that if they have some money left over, you can put up to $35,000 into a Roth IRA for a beneficiary of a 529 plan. as long as they were a beneficiary of a 529 plan for 15 years straight. That is the opportunity, and you can do it up to the Roth annual amount, which right now is $7,500. They just have to have earned income. So we've heard it often that people want to start Roth IRAs for their kids. What is the opportunity for that? Well, generally speaking, they have to have earned income. Well, if you think about it, starting a 529 plan, if that is a goal, is also helping with that goal itself. Because you don't necessarily even have to spend it on college if you would rather spend it on the Roth IRA or put that money there for their future benefit at some point in retirement. What 529 plans can't do, they're not used for first-time home purchases. They're not used for buying that first car. There's going to be penalties associated with taking that money out for something that isn't a qualified expense itself. And the last thing with 529s that I want to bring up is that there's certain ways to fund them. For those who have assets available and really just want to set money aside and say that, hey, college is taken care of, you can do something called super funding a 529. That's 5 years worth of the gift tax exclusion that you can put in all at once. So that's about $190,000, I believe, in 1 year to fund a 529 plan, and generally set it, forget it, allow it to grow and become something that can then pay for college. If we're looking to just max over the course of each year, it's up to the gift tax exclusion, $19,000 being that. So tons of ways to get money in. You don't have to do that amount. You can just maximize the state deduction. You can even do as little as 50 to 100, even $25 a month to start some of these plans. So anyways, I think that's enough about 529s in general. Let's just recap a little bit about what we talked about today. I like to leave everybody with 3 main things. And so something that Zach first brought up is be careful with some of the exuberance in some of these companies that are out there today. Be careful with the exuberance about an IPO like SpaceX. It's debuting at a very high valuation, one of the highest of all time. Stay diversified. Don't allow yourself to get concentrated, and don't allow your risk tolerance to get somewhere that's not realistic. Remind yourself all the time that a 20% correction is looming no matter where we are in the market. And do we want to be allocated the way that we feel like we might just because of current and past events that have led to growth here? So it's something that we help with. Careful of risk tolerance and don't chase returns. Number 2, review your spending. It's a great time of year. It's always smart to just think about how much money you're spending and then think about how much you're going to need to spend for goals coming up. Try to find a sustainable withdrawal rate and be smart about things. Take advantage of the current market and the current timing, and maybe setting some money aside to be able to pay for something in the future. Or if something comes up in the short term, rather than using emergency funds, we could use some of our investments to help pay for that. Again, let us know when these things come up. We can help navigate those things. And then 529 plans, it's a great tool for more than just paying for college. So anyways, that's it from us for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this bi-weekly podcast. We love putting this on for you. Tell your friends about it. Get everybody on here that you possibly can. Let's get a crowd. Anyways, signing off. Oh, wait, one more thing. Julie, what do we got going on at Gentian Financial?
Thanks, Mike. Yes, closing out the month of May, we're going to be meeting a little bit later this morning with some of our ladies in Gentian at the Doty Family Farm, where we're going to be learning about container gardening. So we're looking forward to seeing some of our clients there. And then just a couple save the dates. June 17th is our next birthday club for our June birthdays. That's 12 to 1 o'clock. And then coming up June 24th is our kids finance camp. So it's going to be a great opportunity for kids to learn how to manage money, build good savings habits. So we'd love for you to sign up your kids and your grandkids. So that goes from 9:30 to 1 o'clock, I believe, on June 24th. And then just another save the date in September will be our shred event, and eat outside day. That is going to be September 16th from 11 to 2. So please register and or RSVP to any of those dates. We'd love to see you all. So thanks much. Back to you, Mike.
Excellent. Perfect. I saw your microphone flashing on and off. I appreciate all the help you can get behind the scenes here. So From everyone here at Gentian Financial at our galactic headquarters in Mequon, Wisconsin, we hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of the week and happy 529 day this Friday. All right, take care, everybody.